Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for coming and for spreading the word. Um, as Dan said, this is not about, individual board members. This is not about the league, the league itself. This is really about response to members and a proposal that has been making its way through the board and really just surfaced um, uh, probably less than 3 weeks ago. So we've had not a whole lot of time to digest it, but seems to be reminiscent of a proposal that came up back in 2018, I believe. And when the members got, a good look at what was being proposed, is actually a whole host of motions. They contacted the league en masse, and the end result was that it was withdrawn. So um, there are 15 members of the ARRL board. It requires 8 to pass a regular motion. It requires 10 to pass a motion. That's 2/3 of the board. That affects bylaws. Excuse me, bylaws. If it's been noticed 30 days ahead, and 3/4 to pass a bylaw motion if it has not been noticed 30 days ahead. So that's the basic mechanics. The board starts meeting actually 2 weeks from today. The various standing committees will meet in Connecticut, and then the following day they will converge for the first of 2-day board meeting. Typically, it starts Friday morning and ends Saturday afternoon sometime. The agenda for the meeting is always posted, but the agenda is fairly plain vanilla. It doesn't really describe motions that are coming up. So we rely on information from the league and from our respective directors to tell us what's going on. So there are a couple of motions. One is actually a good one, and we'll talk about that near the end. But let's start with one that seems to be raising a lot of concern, and that's a proposed change to Bylaw 46. Now, you can go onto the ARRL website, enter bylaws, and you can get a complete list of bylaws. It's quite a few pages long, but those are basically the rules of the road for running ARRL, and they are, they've been modified from time to time, but for the most part, they've pretty well stood the test of time. So right now, there is a Bylaw 46 that this motion would look to replace. The current bylaw, it defines a conflict of interest, and it's mainly based on financial, being in a business that conflicts with the league, or otherwise having you or relatives having some sort of financial interest in decisions that might be made by the league. And that's pretty obvious, and that's true of most companies. It also imposes a duty to disclose on the board members if they have any such potential conflict. They're supposed to disclose it. It specifies several levels of recusal, which means a board member may stay and talk but not vote, or they may stay but not talk and not vote, or they may have to leave the room, depending on how intense the issue is. And then it requires all the board members to annually sign an acknowledgement that they are abiding by those conflict of interest rules. The rules also provide for disqualification of a board member, and it says now, only in the rarest of circumstances where the business interest is materially, directly, and consistently competing with the league. So that's what's in place now. And it has, again, as I said, been modified from time to time, but generally speaking, it's served adequately for the board. So, some people are saying, well, what are they trying to fix if it's not broken? So the proposed Bylaw 46, in addition to repeating the existing conflict of interest provisions, would basically create additional sets of responsibilities, explicit responsibilities, for which a violation could result in being declared ineligible to hold your office, and therefore vacating the seat that the members elected you to. These new expectations are set forth in something called the Member Statement on Authority, Responsibility, and Expectations. We'll just call it the statement. It also includes documents that are incorporated by reference, and we'll describe those. A first concern is that the statement is somewhat inconsistent with other bylaws. As I mentioned, it incorporates a couple of other documents by reference, director's workbook and standing orders among them. Now, the thing is, to change the bylaws, as I mentioned earlier, it takes a 2/3 board vote, assuming adequate notice. But directors' workbooks and standing orders do not have to be approved by a majority of the board, a supermajority, or even any of the board. They can be changed by the executive committee. They can be changed in some cases by management. So, that basically says the directors are being held to a standard that may change from time to time, not necessarily with a lot of advance notice. So that's a concern. I mean, either everything that the bylaws require of you are set forth in one document, or they're not. So this new statement, in addition to the conflict of interest, it has a duty of care, which is generally defined as a prudent use of the league's assets and resources. A duty of loyalty, which basically says it's in the, whatever you do should be in the best interests of the league. A duty of obedience, which means adhering to the rules and laws, including everything in this statement and the incorporated documents. And a duty of confidentiality, which basically of non-disclosure of certain things. Now, none of these things really appear objectionable on the surface, so we want to dig in a little bit and see where the issues might be. First question is, who determines what's in the league's best interest? Next, who determines what information is confidential? And then finally, how does this match up with Connecticut state law? Of course, the ARRL is incorporated in Connecticut and is subject to its provisions. So under Connecticut state law, and it looks at the obligations of a director, and it says a director shall discharge his duties in a manner he reasonably believes to be in the best interest of the corporation. And there's the citation for you. So basically, doing the best job they think they can, and following what they believe is the right thing to do. That's Connecticut law. Under the proposed bylaw, the Ethics and Elections Committee can determine that you violated that duty of loyalty. Directors from other divisions could vote on that and decide whether you have violated your responsibility to do things in the in the interest of the league, rather than your own judgment. And they also decide on the penalty that can be imposed, up to and including vacating the seat and declaring you ineligible for life from ever running again. So that's kind of strict. So who determines what information is confidential? The CEO, the board officers? Well, it doesn't really say, but when you look at the statement, basically anything is just that you get, information you get in your position with the league must be considered confidential, except where disclosure is authorized. And it doesn't say by whom. One would assume, again, board officers or the CEO, or legally required. This presents a big issue because as a director, you get a lot of information during the course of your duties and committee work and so on. And much of that is something that you would want to share with your members, or ask some of your members who are experts to get some guidance. But now you really have to walk on eggshells, because potentially anything you disclose could trigger an ethics charge. So the statement says directors have a fiduciary duty to maintain confidentiality and to ensure that candid deliberations and effective strategic and tactical planning. Well, the question is seeking member input, is that bad for effective planning, especially for a membership organization? You know, that seems to be a burning question in many people's minds. And then because things being confidential is kind of the default, question is, how does that affect the director's ability to meet his or her obligation to their members if any disclosure could be picked and cited as a violation of the statement? I served as 9 years as vice director for the Southwestern Division. And we had questions from members all the time. And we had members who are engaged enough that they want to know what the league is doing, what sorts of decisions are being made or are coming up. Can they have any input to that? And to my mind, that's how a membership organization should work. That your representatives are there not only to assist in forming and updating and monitoring policies of the league, but also to serve as a go-between between the league and the members. And one can say, well, is there a difference between duty, a loyalty to the corporation and loyalty to the members? In a membership organization, those should be pretty much intertwined. What's good for the members should be good for the corporation and vice versa. So this question, is it legal? Because the statement, which would be incorporated as a result of the change in bylaws, would create many new opportunities, for a board member to be found in violation of something. That essentially translates to many new opportunities to disqualify a dissenting voice. But here's what the law says. This, again, we have our citation for Connecticut state law. If a director is elected by a class of members rather than the entire membership, and that is the case for the league because they're only elected by their division members, then only the members of that class may participate in the vote to remove him. Now that's fairly significant and it's fairly clear. Yet we see penalties in this proposed change to Bylaw 46 that would certainly reach the level of removing the director. They talk levels of recusal, and then they say, well, if you got so far as level 3 recusal, that's enough to consider the seat vacated and they're gone. I mentioned some good news. We could talk about this now, but there is some good news coming up. As you know, in one of the actions that took place last year was for the league to terminate the physical delivery of QST magazine, the print magazine, and effective in January for all but life members. And if you're a life member and you just paid for 3 years and you're expecting to get the magazine for 3 years, and now you're a half a year into it or a year into it, and all of a sudden what you paid for you're not going to get, it seems to violate basic provisions of fairness. I can't speak to the financial considerations of the league because I'm not privy to that sort of thing. Obviously, if you cut down on the number of printed magazines, you're going to cut down on your costs, but you're also going to, perhaps drive away some members that really kind of rely on that, people who want to read it on a plane or something else. And you also cut the number of eyeballs that advertisers are looking at, and could that affect your advertising revenue, which is not insubstantial for the league. So Director Stratton, and I believe second with Director Familio of Atlantic Division, I have a motion that they plan to present that would roll back that cessation of printed QST for the members who have paid terms that have not yet expired. And we know there are at least quite a few directors who are going to support this motion. If there are enough of them, they can call for a roll call vote. If it turns to a roll call vote, my suspicion is that nobody's going to go on record as not wanting to pass this. So I personally think it has a fairly good chance of passing, but we'll have to wait and see what happens at the board meeting. So we have a set of resources. This is now several places, but there's an Atlantic Division website, atldiv.org, put up by Director Familio. And in that, they have the full text of the proposed bylaw change, and he has it in both PDF and HTML. But if you go to that site, atldiv.org, there'll be a director's message, and then shortly below that, you will see links to the full text of the proposed bylaw change to bylaw 46. So, and I know that, we don't expect you to go and read the whole thing now, but, take a look through it. And again, it's long. I mean, I think when it's printed, it's like 9 or 10 pages long. And not all the provisions are necessarily bad. I mean, there are some things that are necessary, but there are a lot of questions out there. How do you determine what's confidential? What should be confidential and what should not? I mean, we understand certain things like congressional strategy, pending litigation, personnel matters. Those it's normal to keep confidential, in some cases required. But there are a lot of other things that go on with the league, probably a lot more of their activity that some members at least, would be interested to either learn about or contribute to. And that's the sort of thing that we think would be stifled potentially. So read it for yourself. And if you want some context, by the way, I mentioned that directors, if there are enough directors, you can get a roll call vote. Up until last summer, any individual director voting present at the meeting could call for a roll call vote. And what that means is the vote of each director is recorded in the minutes. If there is no roll call vote, then a simple vote tally is passed, or it says the motion passed or failed. Last summer, a majority of the board, I think it was 10 or 11, voted to raise the threshold of calling for a roll call vote from 1 director to 5 directors. So that means unless you have at least 5 directors who want the votes shown, you won't see in the minutes how anybody voted. Now, that's of great concern for a membership organization where you're expected to vote for a member based on the positions they've taken and the positions they've advocated for you. So there's that. I think that's all I have for sharing right now. So why don't we, I think I saw a little thing saying there were a lot of hands up. So Dan or somebody want to manage that? Dan, you're muted.
Helps if I unmute myself, doesn't it? Okay, Don, K6CD. You've had your hand for quite a while. Go ahead.
Thank you. My basic first question, without going through and reading all of the stuff that's on the Atlantic Division page, is have the proponents identified what problem they're trying to solve with this?
To my knowledge, not formally. We haven't really seen anything advocating this because it just came out, and I'm sure they've been working on it for a long time. But there are a number of interpretations. Fred K1VR, who's many of you may know, is the author of the Bible, if you will, on amateur radio antenna permitting, and a former New England director, has written a considerable piece on that, and I think Dan will have a link to that in our on our site. Bob Familio has an analysis, but I know a couple of the directors responded to inquiries from members and said, well, we want to, we want to make sure that we're in compliance with Connecticut law. And you can see there are some significant variances between the new proposal in Connecticut law, where the old one did not seem to be in violation. And also they said, well, we want to take all these requirements and get them all in one place. So those are the, nominally, no one has said this is the problem we're trying to solve. There are some folks who have interpreted or suggested what's actually happening. But again, I would direct you to read their respective opinions, which we'll link to, and you can see what they say about it.
Okay, I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna jump to Rhea because she may have something relevant to what you're saying now, Marty. So go ahead, Rhea, take it away.
All right, I promise this is not league bashing. But so having been in the belly of the beast, so to speak, last year, well, not last year, year before, when they were trying to eject me, they encountered roadblocks, and they encountered the roadblocks of that nobody but the division members could remove a director, right? Nobody but the members. And this was a serious problem. This was argued heavily by the directors who defended me. Thank God for them. Stratton and Familio. And in the end, so what was originally proposed for me was a full disqualification, and that I would essentially just be sitting in the hallway while the board meeting went on. But what they ended up with was a recusal. So, this is essentially to tighten up that what they failed to do with me, and also going back to Dick Norton, where they censored him because that was pretty much all they thought they could do. This is bad. They want the ability to eject people who do not toe the line. And, I was vocal about a lot of things. I was vocal about, I'm a technology expert, so to speak. I was vocal about technology issues, and the CEO didn't like that. I was vocal about, and I know some people have views on this, I was vocal about diversity and inclusion. Okay. And the CEO definitely did not like when I talked about that. So I was marked, and then issue after issue came up, and they failed. And then they also failed to disqualify. Art Zeigelbaum penned a whole big motion saying how Rhea violated because of the book and all that thing. And there are some issues about the book, but at the same time, they tried to disqualify me and failed. So this is to tighten up all of that and to ensure that nobody gets away with what I got away with last time. So.
Okay, well, thank you. Stand by. I'm sure you're going to have some more to add here. Victor, come on, would you please? Victor?
I'm going to, good evening. I'm going to hold Maria's last statements in reserve. That's kind of new information for me that I didn't really quite all understand. My question was going to be back to Connecticut law, and my position as a member. The members are the corporation is the members. We elect our directors to serve us. And I'm not forfeiting my right, but I am transferring my right, or maybe it's a proxy, to my director to make those decisions under under the rules as they're written, to remove or to declare something improper, wrong, however they want to define that. Is that a contradiction with Connecticut law that I am transferring my responsibility to my regional director? Thank you.
Marty?
Okay, well, your responsibility really as a member is to keep yourself informed of things going on, and certainly not to the extent that a director needs to do, but to be engaged and active, hopefully to participate in league programs that interest you. But you certainly you should be able to rely on your director to reach out to you for things that are concerning to you, B, keep you informed whether as to what's going on with the league, and C, vote on various policy decisions in a way that will be beneficial to the league. So that's about all I can say about that. But we don't want to see an end to the division system, definitely, because interests vary with geography to a considerable extent. And that's one of the reasons we have directors from all parts of the country. I saw Dan, I saw a couple of questions I'm trying to deal with right away here if I can.
Okay, if you want to, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, one is several people talked about, they opted out and they're still getting the January or they have a term membership. I believe that the January magazine was sent in December. They're usually almost, like 3 weeks ahead. So delivery presumably would end with what would go out in January. I think that's when they were stopped sending magazines. I don't know of any other, I don't know the specific cutoff, but that was what I understood was going to happen. Let's see, there was another one on, where are we here? Was there was there any financial analysis of the impact of the QSD change and the dues increase? And if so, did all the directors get to see it? Yes, there was such an analysis. The directors who are, my understanding from talking to several directors, obviously I'm not privy to it, but the ones who are on the Administration and Finance Committee did get to see it. The remaining directors, at least the ones I talked to who requested to see it, were not allowed to see it. And that is very concerning to me, if they're being asked to vote on something and they didn't get to see the financial analysis of it. So that's and again, it's third hand, but from people who were in the room, they said, yes, that's what happened. A director or two asked for it and they were told no. And the president and CEO backed up, no, you can't have it. Let's see, another one. Somebody says the key is there are no tight definitions as to what's improper under the proposed new code. And yeah, as we've cited, what is confidential, what isn't, what's, there are all sorts of gotchas in there. And to the extent that these things are not defined, who can give you permission to talk to your major donors? All of those things are rather poorly defined. I'm not sure they'd be any better if they were tightly defined, but in terms of the outcome. But the effect is about the same. Let's see. Jeff Beals, my former seatmate on the back row from Southeastern Division in the boardroom, said that don't forget to mention the youth discount motion. Yes, there was also a motion that will be presented in a couple of weeks to provide a discount of dues for youth. I don't know the actual age cutoff. Could be 18, could be 25, but I suspect that one will sail through pretty easily. You know, we're not, you know, the membership itself is aging, as I understand it. And, you know, you look around most clubs and so on, you kind of see that happening. And obviously, you know, amateur radio as we knew it, you know, many years ago, is not being practiced the same by newcomers coming into the hobby, but we certainly want them to get a taste of whatever they can. And if getting them, giving them an incentive, you know, a break on getting into the league and seeing what some of the league resources are and so on, then yeah, I would expect that would definitely go up in the vote. Somebody asked about, is there an existing recall procedure since under current law? I mean, basically only the members, unless short of death or disability, the members in the division are the ones that can recall a director. And yes, there is a procedure. It's been there a long time. It's in the bylaws, and you can. I believe it requires to just to have the recall ballot requires 10% of the number of people who voted in the last division election, or if it was a default, if nobody ran against them, then it becomes 10% of the entire division members. That latter threshold is probably pretty impossible. You know, if you haven't had anybody voting for a long time to get 10% of the total membership. I mean, in Southwestern Division, that'd be 1,200 people. And even more in the Southeastern Division and Atlantic and West Gulf. So that's probably a pretty much impossible threshold. But if there was an election, and in following the election results, I find it's typical that of the eligible voters, setting aside those 3 years where they did electronic only balloting, which was a disaster, typically the number of eligible voters actually voting is between 20 and 28%, sometimes 30. So that would mean you would need 10% of 30% of the voters, eligible voters in the division, which is a more achievable threshold.
Okay, as Marty's talking here, I'm putting documents into comments and our chat, and I welcome you guys to open those up and look them over. I think because we're bypassing some of the concerns that some of the directors have voiced to me and I've heard. So look over those documents and ask appropriate questions regarding those. Okay, I see that. I'll move it away. It looks like, John, you're up next.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I couldn't find the unmute button for a second. And I appreciate you guys putting this together. There's I know there's a lot of consternation about this issue. From my standpoint, so you know a little bit of my background, I've been a C-level executive for over 25 years and have served on many boards of directors for nonprofits and profits, for-profit companies. This is really not any real different than what I've seen in the business world and the nonprofit world. It's a little different in the fact that this is a membership organization, but a lot of this has been, and conjecture is the wrong word. It's opinion, and I understand there's some gray areas here, but that's life in a whole. I can tell you from being on board of directors and currently serving on two, that you know, what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing to some extent is a little bit of fear mongering. And I'm gonna, you know, I don't mean to say that somebody's stirring the pot, but maybe past issues have reared themselves again. But you know, I look over this and I look at it, and I've looked at documents I've signed over the years and boards I've been part of, and this is not really much different than what we've seen in the past. I don't see any gag orders in this, which I've heard from people. I don't see a muzzling of people's dissent. Sure, you can look at it and say, oh, well, they can do this and they can do that. But in reality, the situation is you can read anything you want in any document that's there. Okay. You can only make things so tight, but you have to have a way to deal with somebody who has a definite conflict of interest or somebody who's not able to do the best for the organization and the membership. As a board of directors, you have a fiduciary responsibility. You also have a responsibility to membership. So I urge you to read through the document for yourself. Don't take other people's words for it. And don't let people put ideas into your head. Read the document. I can't speak to the legalities. I don't understand Connecticut law. I know if I was a executive and I was proposing something like this, I'd be darn sure that I'd check with my legal counsel, and maybe my legal counsel's right, maybe my legal counsel's wrong. But that, you know, that is on the executive committee or whoever proposed this piece of legislation, and the attorneys and the judges can fight that out if it comes to that. But again, we've heard a lot of dissenting opinion. In my opinion, from my standpoint, I look at it and see, nothing that really concerns me overall, that I would have a situation saying, hey, this just doesn't seem right to me. I've seen these documents for 25 years. There's nothing new here. So just my opinion. And I wanted to give some dissent because it seems like we're not hearing any here.
John, thank you for sharing that. And several people have raised the question that, we see this in boards, including nonprofit boards, all the time. This is nothing new. And, I think is consistent with the point you were raising. The thing is, most large nonprofits are either appointed boards or they are self-selected boards. But and for those, I don't see any of these rules that necessarily cause a problem. But again, when the board is elected by the membership needs some means of evaluating what the directors are doing that they elected and how they're doing. And if you can't find out how they voted and you can't get any background on some of the actions they're doing, some people say, hey, that would be hard for a member to make an informed judgment on whether that director is the person they want in that chair. So that seems to be the big difference between a membership organization like the League and a lot of other nonprofits.
And Marty, I will agree with you. I would hope to hear that somewhere in this negotiation, because obviously this is going to be negotiated out, as we all know, everything is negotiated, that we do have roll call votes for everything, because I do think membership is should have the ability to see what people vote. If you elect somebody, you want to see how they vote on things. There should be a voting record for every director and every vice director. That's not a question. I just, from a standpoint, and again, there is a difference between a membership organization and a appointed board or a board from a for-profit corporation, that most of those are appointed or asked. So I get your point there, and I see that. But again, for me, none of this bothers me, other than that there is no roll call vote. I made the assumption that there were always roll call votes.
Yeah. Now that one again changed last June, but Mike Raisbeck, W1TWF, Mike used to be when I joined the board in 2008, he was the vice director for New England, and he was that position for many years, and he subsequently ended up becoming a second vice president. So he sits on the front row, and he just wrote his annual report to the board, and I think that's out in the wild right now. And one of the things he recommends is that they change the rules back, that all votes will be roll call votes. And he thinks that it's important for the members to do that. And he's been sitting through this a lot longer than I have. So a good suggestion. Dan, back to you.
Okay, again, I'm putting some documents into the chat because I understand where some of you are coming from. A couple of these documents point out the problems that they look at. And one is a director and one is a expert director. I've talked to several directors on the phone, and some of the things they're pointing out is the way it's set up. It's going to make it very well. Read the documents. I can sit here and the documents, some of them are kind of long. So anyway, go ahead and read the documents if you would, and then I'll be sure to continue with the questions here. Fred, Arizona, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. I appreciate the presentation here tonight. Just a little bit of my background. I was the board of director and also chair of board for a national trade organization. So I have a little bit of experience in how all this stuff works, and it just seems like I think John, you were saying this is a lot different than what goes on in a lot of other boards. I see a lot of similarities here, and if I could just make a couple of comments, one thing that's really disconcerting to me is the fact that there were board of directors that were asking to see this report on the magazine and weren't allowed to see it. I mean, that's extremely troubling. I wonder how something like that could happen. How can we fix this as a member organization, and what we got to do fix stuff like that? Because I mean, if you hire a board of directors by voting them in, right? And I've used the term hire. I mean, it's all volunteers. But I mean, they're representing us, so extremely troubling. As far as the magazine goes, I know a lot of people have been commenting about that. We had a similar instance, with our trade publication. We got rid of the print because it was so expensive and it was getting out of hand to print the magazine. I will tell you though, it did hurt our organization. That was one of the ways that we touched a lot of our members, and we too were a member organization, and we lost a lot of people because we were out of touch and trying to communicate, as we know, a lot of different ways to communicate, and people choose to get their communication different ways. That was one that was a big thing for us. So I'm sad to see that they made this decision, but I'd like to see some discussion as to how maybe we could bring it back. But also too, I do have a question: is what's next? I mean, if there are those of us that are not in agreement with some of these proposed changes to the bylaws, how do we make our voices heard, and who do we talk to? So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Yeah, Fred, quick question on your organization, your other organization that you mentioned. When you discontinued the print magazine, did you have an electronic version available at the time?
Yes.
Okay,
and
you still
readership
lost.
severely dropped off.
Okay, thank you. And as far as what to do next, normally I would say start with your director who's going to vote and let them know. In your case, your director is one of those people who's opposed to the motion already, as far as I can tell. So that's not a difference. Contact members in other divisions and ask them to contact their directors if they agree with your concerns. And then, of course, you can always write to the management directly. Some people are choosing to do that as well. Some people are sending to all the directors and vice directors in the league. Now, the thing is, it's been general protocol over the many years that directors do not directly engage with members outside their division. They don't want to undercut the elected representative. So I'm not sure how much good contacting other directors than your own would do, but certainly contacting
you lost
members.
your audio.
But hear it now?
Yeah, you're sounding good. Go ahead.
Okay. But I would suggest that, again, if you contact friends and associates you have, club members, whatever, in the divisions where other directors are responsible, and share the information with them. If they conclude, as you have, that there's some concerns that need to be addressed, then they can talk to their director, and the director should, engage them.
Okay, I'll throw a couple comments in here. And there's some reference to this in chat. What they're trying to do on the section manager part, we've had some meetings on this, is get us to march to the orders of the HQ. And that's okay. That's what that makes total sense. But the way it's worded and the way they're coming across, I, as a section manager, am voted by that HAM's in my section. So I think I owe them quite a bit of responsibility to take care of their needs. It's not an and or thing type of thing. With the loyalty thing that they're doing with the directors, it's about the same situation where they are once they sign that loyalty agreement, they either march with the direction of the director and the flow is, or they're in trouble. And I don't think for a membership organization, I don't think that's the way it should work. That's just me. We just take it away.
All right. So I heard the argument about how, this is how it's done in the corporate world. And, while I've not been in the C-suite, I've been in corporate America for quite a long time, including having interactions with some pretty powerful people. I'm also on my third board in the ham radio organization. So one important point, this is a membership organization. And one thing I realized, in serving is that in a for-profit corporation, you'll find that you have people who are shareholders, right? And, and then you have a CEO and then you have a board. Who is accountable to who is my question. And how, who are you really serving? In a for-profit corporation, you serve the shareholders, right? You do what's right for the shareholders because people buy and invest in your company because they want to, to have something of value. In a membership organization, in the ARRL, there's this kind of notion, dynamic I've noticed on the board where we have now where my philosophy has always been the members come first, but among some of my fellow directors and the CEO, it's been, well, the corporation is your first loyalty and you have to be loyal to the corporation first, and the members probably not even. This kind of thing bothers me because if it weren't for the members, the ARRL would not have a reason to exist, right? The ARRL exists for the members. That's number one. Number two is the CEO serves at the pleasure of the board. So the board essentially is supposed to be in control. The CEO is supposed to execute whatever, the direction of the board, the vision direction of the board. What this dynamic, this bylaw 46 will do, this will upend all of that. And it's, in some cases, it kind of plainly upend some of the things in Connecticut law. For example, in a membership association where only one class of members can, remove a director, whereas now it's become where your fellow directors can vote you off the island. This would be fine in, let's say, something like a self-selected board, right? Like I'm on a nonprofit of a self-selected board. But in a membership organization, it comes down to who are we serving? Are we serving the members? Do the members have a say, or are we serving 15 directors and 15 vice directors and some officers and a CEO? And some paid staff, but they don't really get to make any decision making. And that's what bothers me most about this. During my service to the ARRL, for me, it was always about the members, right? I always regarded, regardless of what people say is proper corporate practice. Yes, they gave me a big, book by the American Bar Association to read when I first got in there, saying your loyalty is always to the corporation. But I knew that, in the ARRL, the members are who matter. The members are who I'm serving. I was elected by the members to serve them. I wasn't elected to serve 225 Main Street. I was elected to serve the Hudson Division. And that's who my loyalty is. So you know, that's regardless of what I know corporate practice says one thing. But I think in the ARRL that how, you know, we need to not lose sight of that. Back to net.
Dan, can I answer a couple of other questions?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, somebody asked, one question asked, the last July meeting when when the vote was when it was decided to change the threshold for roll call votes to 5 directors, who made that motion, who seconded it? It was minute number 38 and the minutes are on the ARRL website. Director McIntyre, Pacific Division, made the motion, and Director Norris, Delta Division, seconded it. So that's the answer to that question. Somebody mentioned whether, you know, an employee, you know, says something on social media, could that be considered to be official? You know, and he says the best path is probably to not make statements on social media that might have something to do with your employer. Obviously, good, you know, good advice if you could keep from doing that. And somebody else referred to a respected National Contest Journal contributor who was forced to leave due to a headquarters directive about a social media posting. The interesting thing there is, I believe the posting referred to was made 6 years earlier, and he was asked to go back and delete it after 6 years. I don't know if you can even do that. I'm not on social media, so I'm no expert, but my understanding was he did, and I presume that resolved it. It was a little surprising because the National Contest Journal actually was an independent publication, and back many years ago, the league agreed with the publishers to take it over as the basically to, you know, produce it and print it, but not to take over editorial content. But when this very popular author was told that they couldn't accept the article, and it's on a subject that is very hot, then that raised the question, you know, what was the offense? And the best we can tell, it was some years ago. So, you know, but as far as comments on social media, yeah, certainly those could get you into trouble. And I think that's the answers I have for the moment. Back to Net.
Okay. Brett, go ahead and pick her up. Brett?
I think I already, if you're talking about me, I already
Oh,
made my comments.
maybe I forgot to lower your hand. I'm sorry. Well, Doug, over in Port Orange, Florida, go ahead and take it.
All right, I got this thing unmuted. Just as a quick background, I just gave up a position I had held for the last, I don't know, 11, 12 years as the business manager for another national membership organization. I handled the magazine, the advertising, and a few other odds and ends, and left the rest of the stuff to the other guys. But one thing, after I left, they did make a decision to move the magazine to digital. And this kind of supports some of what Frank said, but the advertisers today in most publications want to know how many hands and faces look at that ad. So your distribution list is important, the level of distribution, and in our case, it went to a lot of headquarters levels, CEO, C-suites, and they knew it would get passed down, left out, left around. So that's worth something. But when you go digital, what the media guys want to know is how many clicks do you get on their advertisement, whether it's drill down. And ARRL, if they're not prepared to publish to that level and produce those statistics for the advertisers, may not keep the same support. And if you look at the print edition, and I don't know about you guys, but generally I would start front cover and I just kind of page through and I'd look at everything. And back 20% of the magazine is a stack of MFJ ads, and the rest of the guys, hang on just a second. Anyway, the last of the production, the advertisers are looking for clicks. So when you produce a digital magazine, you got an index, you can jump around in it and that sort of thing. But the folks that look at those ads, generate the revenue. And where ARRL is going to have to be careful is that are they going to get a much visibility? Who's going to really read the magazine? But more important, who's going to actually look at an ad and not just let it go away? And most of the guys like Ham Radio Outlet, MFJ, and the rest of them may go back sending out catalogs more than they do, or flyers or something. Put their money somewhere else. And that's probably what ARRL's got to worry about more than anything else. As far as some of the rest of this stuff, I think I agree that the board of directors work for the membership, and just like my last one. So if you try to keep everybody in line, somebody at the top does, and I've seen this, it ends up backfiring. So my 2 cents, Dan. Thanks for the time.
Not a problem. I might make a comment on QST. I've been told that our membership is somewhere in the, in the high 60s, and another comment that was in the 70s, but they're aging out. They're older folks. A lot of the older folks don't want to do digital. They want a magazine. They want some paper in their hand. They want the morning newspaper in their hand. They don't want to read it on a cell phone or a computer. And that's part of the problem they're going to be facing by trying to get some of these people to get rid of the QST magazine. It's an uphill struggle for them. I see wait just a moment. I see that John, K7SYS, has been trying to get in. He's having a problem there. John, go ahead, come on in. John.
So am I here?
Yeah, we got a big J there, John.
Hello?
Hello,
Hello?
John.
We can hear you.
Okay, all right. Well, I would just say to the group, as I've said to Dan in the cup, I'm a little disappointed. Advertised as being I'm just disappointed with that. You can't hear me? I'm disappointed that we don't seem to be having very much balance here tonight. For a group that was not going to bash the ARRL of it.
Yeah.
We
invited league officials to attend, and unfortunately, we did not get a response.
There are some here, but they're in a rough spot. They really can't. I've talked to several directors. I put into the chat there, if you care to read them, a couple, 2 or 3 of the letters that they put out to their people, but they can't come on here and say all they like to do. They gave them okay to prevent that. There's lots of concerns the way it's going. Now then, are we trying to bash the ARRL? Not. Unfortunately, we're talking about our concerns about this proposal. And
yeah, I understand that. I have a slightly different perspective. I too have been on the board of membership organizations. I've also founded a not-for-profit organization. Actually, it's been very successful. It's worth over several $1 million now. The one thing, and I remember one was telling me once that when you're on the board, you follow the process of the board. Made a decision. You have basically 3 choices. One choice is to agree to what the board of which you are a member has decided and commit. Another choice is disagree with what the board has decided, but still to commit. You're still part of the board, you're still part of the organization. The third choice is basically, if it's something that's so egregious that you just can't live with it, leave. And I think sometimes what I've seen in the board, and I'm a little concerned what's going on now with the $25 issue, is the board went through a process. They made a decision, and then some people decided that, some directors decided they didn't like that decision. And so what has become a very American tradition in 2024, they start threatening to go hire attorneys and file lawsuits, i.e., if you can't win through the legislative process, take it to the court and let the court decide. The board that I had to run, I can tell you that if someone did that, they would not be very long for that board, because that simply is not acceptable behavior. You can't run an organization that way. It just doesn't work. So I'm a little concerned that some of this is sour grapes. Really, well, it's gotten to the point that how many?
Hawaii.
Oh, I got to go work them. 177 people are all fired up about this, and I'm disappointed. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Well, the question I have is, I as a member, or I as a ham radio operator, I vote for my director. He goes back to the league. Now the league is what's saying, the heck with what they're wanting you to do. You go do what we want to do. And that's what you're saying, that when they go back there, their allegiance isn't to who voted them, but to what the board is doing. So I don't think you can have it either both ways. You either got to be serving the people who put you in office, or serving what the board is trying to do there. So is that what you're saying, that once you're elected by membership, you go back there and you do what the board does and not what?
I'm saying that once you're elected to the board, you now have a very difficult situation on your hand. As I said to several of you in emails, now that you're on the board, you're flying in a higher helicopter. You're seeing a bigger than you're always going to see a bigger picture. That's what we elected you to do, is to see a bigger picture. And so you're in a tough position, because you're going to have to try and balance the needs of the members, which quite frankly sometimes can be extremely selfish and self-centered, with the needs of the corporation. And in the case of the league, one of the needs right now of the corporation is to survive. And so you've got to figure out how to balance those two. And I think I've said to you, to Dan, in an email, I reject this false dichotomy that to me is a false dichotomy that says either you have to be loyal to the members, or you have to be loyal to the league, but you can't be loyal to both. I think that's a false dichotomy.
In this particular case, we have several directors, some I can name right now and some I just know about, that have not gone to their membership in their divisions. They've chosen to to say nothing about this because they know it's a hot potato. And if you'll read some of the stuff I've been putting in the chat, you'll see some of the comments along that line. But when they're not speaking to their members through the channels they have to do that, and they're going with the board because they are loyal to the board, I think we have a problem with that picture.
I think there's an answer to that, Dan.
Okay, take it away, Barry.
When you're elected to the board, you are responsible to your members, because we're the ones that elect you. It's important to be able to get input from all sides for you to make your decision. Having the ability to decide, an open discussion is vital to the survival of the league. They need to hear from all sides. They can't be laser focused on one issue and one decision. However, once the board votes and the policy is set, it's up to the board and it's up to the section managers, et cetera, to try to implement that policy. Even though they disagreed with it, it was done in an open manner so everybody could see how everybody felt. And once the decision is made by the majority of the board, then it becomes the league policy, and everybody on the board is obligated to try to implement that policy. And that's how it's done, or it's supposed to be done. What's happened in the last 5 or 6 years is this open discussion has been stifled. The directors don't want to hear from the members. The directors don't want to hear from the section managers. The directors don't want to hear from anybody. They are making up their own minds based on very limited input from their members. I know it's hard to find someone to make a commitment to run for the board of directors of a national organization. We have a problem with both the section manager level and on the board of director level to find people willing to run. But we still have to support each other, gather information from all the different sides, whether you agree with some of the policies or not, and make our decisions based on the policies. This proposal that's coming up has been proposed before by people that want to change the way the league operates. And I don't think it's right. The league is a membership organization. Headquarters has to understand, and I posted this in chat, that they don't exist as headquarters unless the league has enough members to support them and pay their salaries, etc. We were the ones that decide, we were interested in this subject, put out a book for it. We're the ones that want this kind of a service. You do a program like ARRL and support space stuff and stuff like that, youth programs, technical services. That's all decided because the membership wants that. It's not decided from the top down, it's decided from the bottom up. And the league has always been a bottom-up organization. And that's what we need to get back to. And we don't need to be lectured to in the field because we know what's good for our local people. Headquarters has no clue how, for example, Idaho has their club program. But we're being constantly told, this is how we have decided in Newington, Connecticut, how Idaho will run their club program. Instead of just giving us guidelines and trying to encourage us to do it, they've been trying to lecture us, trying to tell us how we should be running our programs. And that's why, for example, in my section, more hams are dying than are joining ARRL. And we as a group of members needs to do something about that. We as members, if we would each recruit 2 or 3 new members to join ARRL, ARRL could triple their members. And all of a sudden, the league would be much healthier than it is right now. That's all I'm going to say for right now because I want to keep this positive. Back to you, Dan.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Marty's just, John, you're going to say something?
No.
Okay. Must have been your alarm back in the background set it off. Okay, and thank you, Barry. Marty had to bail out for a moment. His computer died on him. Don't you just love technology? I think what Barry's saying is to the point. We've been here before. So in last go around of electeds, a lot of the directors got elected into position running on transparency. And what we're seeing with this proposal is they're not getting closer to transparency. They're getting a lot farther away from it, a lot farther away. And that's the concern. I think if you wanted to look at one word to describe the whole thing is transparency. I've been back to headquarters. I've had firsthand, as other section managers here, that the field is just a pain in the butt. They're noise. They don't want to hear from us. And that's okay. That's their opinion because here in the field, I take care of my section and I do want to know what the members are wanting. And I do listen to them. And that should go all the way up. It doesn't always do it. Some sections are a lot better than others, but we're not here to complain about that. We're going the wrong direction with this conversation. While is complaining this up, we're trying to discuss what the proposals doing and not doing. Hopefully by now you've had a chance to read some of that stuff I put in the chat there. Okay, we've got some hands up. Let's take it away there. Pete, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to, obviously I don't know what Rhea's talking about in New Jersey, And I don't know about a lot of the individual things going on here because the confidentiality clause in the bylaws that we have now is working, but that's okay. I do want to just mention that the bylaws come from the membership and go to every elected official. And that's the membership telling the elected officials how we want them to behave. That's exactly what it is. It comes to the membership and it goes to every elected official and it tells them how we want them to behave. And if we want them to have a roll call vote on every vote, then that's what should be done. And if we want 5 directors to vote for a roll call vote, then that's what should be done. And if we want our directors, you know, to make up their own minds and not go to their members, or state managers not to go to their members and ask for their opinion, then that's what should be done. Of course, a lot of this I would be surprised at because it's contrary to what I feel, but that's not what this conversation is about. This conversation is about the organization, a membership organization running itself based upon what the members want. And the bylaws change. It sounds like, from what Barry is saying and Dan is saying, it sounds like the bylaws change is coming from the elected officials down to the membership. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. That's a huge problem.
Well, that's sort of how we see it. And it's really coming from some paid individuals, the CEO and other people like that back at the league. It isn't going the right direction. Communications transparency is falling apart. But again, hopefully guys are reading or at least downloading those files I sent you. It gives you an idea, because we're missing a whole lot of discussion points tonight, and it's sad we're doing that. Frank, over in Ohio, go ahead and take it.
Thank you, Dan. Let me lower my hand here to get rid of that confusion. And I'm not going to wave my resume. Been on a number of corporate boards, a number of nonprofit boards, worked in the C-suite, whole 9 yards, seen a lot of this. I agree on one hand with John's statement much earlier that this is not uncommon language in the corporate world. And we have to face it, we have a corporation, even though it's a nonprofit corporation, it's a corporation. So there are some scrapings that we have to pay attention to, legalities, et cetera, et cetera. You also have to pay attention to the fact that it's a membership organization. My concern with a lot of the discussions that we've had so far this evening is that we're in the weeds, we're not seeing the forest for the tree. And an awful lot of what I'm sensing, and I may be incorrect, but an awful lot of what we're sensing here, I believe, is a cultural issue. People have mentioned numerous times things have changed, okay, from something that was to what is. And it seems to me that we have some bad cultural things going on within the organization that we've already kind of identified. You know, the tail is wagging the dog, not vice versa. The membership should be all important. By the same token, directors have to make hard decisions. That's all understood. But if you zoom back, what is some of the bigger picture here? The transparency that Dan identified is huge. And probably if there weren't previous episodes of lack of transparency, or something that maybe not a majority of the membership, but a significant portion of the majority, or a significant portion of the membership thought was foul play or not done, according to Hoyle. And then after that, they're constantly keeping an eye out. What we're developing within our own organization is factions, pretty strong factions. And usually that's a death knell for an organization. That's not a good thing. So this bigger picture is, don't get me wrong. I understand people being upset about a magazine or a specific vote. I really question the roll call issue. That's huge. That's kind of an indication of this cultural change. Some of these seemingly insignificant things, like the roll call change, are not insignificant. And if we again zoom back and say, why is this going on? And more importantly, to Fred's question, what can we do about it? I mean, we can all sit here and muddle and be upset. And when the Zoom's over, what changes? Who wants to raise their hand and say, we need to do something about this? And what can we do? I think that's the really important takeaway, hopefully, from tonight. If it's not, it's just more of the same grumbling. And grumbling doesn't get you anywhere. What's the actions that need to be taken? And I think, personally, the first action should be identifying cultural changes. And there seems to be, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but there seems to be some significant cultural changes that have happened within the past 5, possibly 10 years. The worst, I've been involved in the ARRL way too many decades, not just years, okay? And the worst thing that I ever heard about ARRL years ago was it was a good old boys crew, you know? And, you know, for smaller volunteer organizations, maybe that's easy to understand. You don't hear that today. You hear about these factions. You hear about these people at each other's throats. Whoa, how did that change? What happened? Why is it that management or certain directional faction want to keep things like this really important decision about a magazine that a lot of the membership was upset about? It's obvious it's not going to be published in the magazine, that financial report. Why? If it were me on that board of directors, I would have demanded that it was published in the magazine. It would have saved a whole lot of heat on my butt, because I'm going to have to explain it, and I can't explain it because I don't have the information. If that was a slam dunk financial analysis that said we can't afford this paper magazine anymore, they should have instituted public relations. By the way, that's not a dirty word, because we're an important part of the public for the ARRL, the membership. Okay, very important. They should have sold us on that, made it absolutely logical that we couldn't afford that magazine anymore. No, they kept the financial analysis quiet, secret almost. I don't understand that. And I think those types of I'm looking for the word, almost like a part of a disease. What's the word I'm looking for? You know what I'm talking about here. There's indications that something's wrong, and it's more cultural than one thing. It's a bigger picture. And I hope we can see the bigger picture. And I hope beyond seeing it, we try to do something about it.
Boy, you're hitting it on the nail head there. You're absolutely right. There's been a culture change big time in a lot of different ways. But what we got to do, whether you agree with them or not, it doesn't matter, but get a hold of your director, because they're going to have these both. In fact, they're supposed to be on a Zoom meeting tonight, probably over with now, to discuss these exact issues. One of the problems is we didn't even know about this thing that we're talking about tonight a few days ago. I've been told by a couple of directors now that when they went to ask about financials, they were told it was a secret. They couldn't be told that. So, you know, transparency goes back to the rule. We got some great directors. We got some people out there I think are trying to do a great job, and I commend them. And we need to use them. We need to contact our directors via email, call, phone call, whatever, and explain where you're coming from. And for those that's not putting the word out to their own membership, encourage them to do it. I certainly been trying to encourage mine to do it. And so far, all he's done is held a meeting with one of his ham clubs that he attends, and he gave a lecture to them, and that's it. I have no clue what he said there. It'd be kind of nice if we knew what that was going on. Okay, ramming on here as usual. It looks like Victor, you got your hand up. I don't know why that's my deal. Let's Victor, hang on here. Stu, go ahead. You've been there a long time. Stu and Southern Cal, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, guys. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, everybody says they can. I'm rather high modulation. So, the one question that I really haven't gotten answer to tonight was the first question that was asked, which is, what problem was this even supposed to solve? Why did they put this forward? What's some of the history? my personal opinion is there was a lot of discontent over the taking away of the magazine portion of your membership. And yes, it was, by my numbers, a huge advance in cost to each member. And if you take into consideration pulling the magazine out, it was even a larger cost. Now, yes, it is available digitally. We can sit here and go over the magazine 100 million times, but the party has been done on that one. We've probably beaten it into the ground at this point. I just want to know, what is the fear that is in the board right now that is wanting this change in the bylaws? There has to be an underlying issue there.
There is. It's called control, and that's only my personal opinion, but everything's pointing to that. If they're wanting the board all follow in lockstep, and then they're wanting the section managers to all follow in lockstep, and they're taking away the means of communications and transparency, it boils down to one thing: it's a control issue.
Well, I'm not going to argue that point. Why do they feel they've lost control? And maybe that's really my question. I mean, we could talk about how corporate America works and everything else and all the things that we do. I've sat on boards for nonprofit. I've sat on boards for profit. Everything that we're talking about here, everything that is in that particular modification is kind of standard. We've already covered that. Again, I want to understand what spun this up. I mean, if we have a problem with the directors that we have elected, okay, then that's something that is a completely different problem. Anyway, again, okay, it's about control. What control are they after, and what caused this? What discontent? What is their fear? They fear that if somebody talks, that members are going to bail out. That's, again, I want to understand what it is. If I understand what it is, I know how to fight it. But you can't fight something that you don't understand. Anyway, thank you for your time, guys.
Well, you make a lot of sense, and I appreciate the comments. I think a lot of us have different views. I've already voiced too many of my personal views here. Let's take some more. Marty, I see you back. You want to come on? Well, he's not on yet. Got no video, so he's still fighting with his computer.
Sorry about that. Is that better?
Yeah, there you are.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I had to reboot everything. I don't have much else at this point. I just want to hear from folks, and somebody put in chat that somebody had an open mic that was causing some feedback. So let's keep an eye out or ear out for that.
Okay, I didn't notice it myself, and I haven't. Barry, let's pick you up for a moment. How are we doing in chat?
Lots of good comments in chat. I would recommend everybody afterwards read this. And yes, we're recording this, so it will be made available for others. And I saw that in chat too.
Yes, there's a lot on the East Coast, especially. It's very late. A lot of people rely upon the videos. Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Hey, you hear me okay, Dan?
Hear you just fine.
Great, thanks. Dan and I go way back. I've been former section manager for Idaho in the 90s, and I'm a C-level guy. I currently run a policy and governance committee for the state of Idaho and chair it. So I'm familiar with the laws and the legal stuff. Has to do with these boards. I have perceptions on this, but I'm really trying to take it to what's the governance really here that we need to be concerned with. For those of you that don't know, I've been a life member for a long time. Section managers carry out the work of the league. They're elected in their sections, and they don't have any say really in governance. They can advise the directors and push information out, but directors are really elected by the membership to provide governance on how the corporation is supposed to be run or the way they'd like to see it run. Now, the NDAs may have come into play because there's some liabilities in the corporation that have to be protected. And it's an unfortunate thing. And I'm betting a lot of dollars that that's exactly what's going on and why a lot of directors are probably not talking. So my recommendation really is to the membership, and I'm not taking sides, but I do see some things I would probably disagree with in the bylaws, you know, with transparency. But I think it really comes down to, you really need to get to know your directors, vice directors personally, because they are the governance for the corporation that you are a member of and own. So you really need to get to a position on whether you get enough signaling from your director that you think things are going the right direction or not. And if you don't have that kind of relationship with your director or people you know that know the directors very well, you might want to seek that out, because it really is your responsibility as a member to enforce that for yourself. And I think there's a lot of, when I worked in the section, you know, it's like Dan knows, there was always disgruntled members for one thing or another. There were always some kind of faction working against each other. It's probably not as bad today at the league level, because now the league is having to be more managed closer to the corporation model than it had been in the past. And yeah, that is your change that you're trying to identify, the climate of how the league is being operated. So there's going to be a lot of issues, and I know the personnel issues in the league operations was a problem in the past. Couldn't talk a lot about it, especially when you deal with a CEO, and I get that. I know what the laws are. You just that's where it really comes into play, to know your directors as personally as you can, or at least one degree of separation, somebody you know that trusts, knows the director very well, and at least can signal to you whether, you know, things are up and up or not. The other thing is, when you're dealing with a corporation that has funds and decisions have to be made on money, that's a very ugly thing. People have a lot of opinions on where the money should be spent, whether you like it or not. And I think the directors are probably on top of trying to make sure the priorities are correct. If they're not, again, that relationship with the director is where that needs to be pushed. I know communications, wow, they really seem bad. I would probably tend to agree that maybe a PAO for the league would do pretty good for the membership, improving if it's possible and not create a liability. But you just don't know. If you're on the inside, you probably do to some degree. But there are communication avenues outside the league that the membership may want to pursue, like through Facebook. If there are enough members that believe the directors are not operating in the best interest of the membership, or they don't have the trust, then there are ways to communicate that through other channels without directors and things like that and NDAs getting involved. So hopefully I've given some people some push to get to know their directors and make that decision for themselves on what's really going on. And Dan, thanks for the opportunity to speak to the group. I haven't been involved in a while, but it seems like it was coming to a head. Thanks.
Well, you're quite welcome. I didn't even know about this until a few days ago, and I'm a section manager. I had no clue about this whole situation. And since then, I made a lot of phone calls to other directors and people who's involved. And I wholeheartedly hope you guys will download those files I put out there in chat, read them over, and then yes, get a hold of your director. Right now, that's the course of the action that normally is acceptable and how it should be done. Just let your director know how you feel. It doesn't mean he'll change his mind, and your feelings might be different than his, but you need to talk to him. So shoot an email off to your directors or phone call them or whatever. Okay, Everett, yeah, Victor, go ahead and take it. Victor.
wondering if they get back to me. I have three questions here. First, either now or at the end of the meeting, could you please refresh us on when this next meeting is? The second, because we're talking about bylaws and we're talking about membership, is this a proposal that's coming out for a bylaws revision? And we're supposed to vote July 1st, that sort of thing, at an annual meeting sort of thing. And the third question I have is Frank talked about culture. Am I out of line if I ask Maria if she thinks that the culture shift and what her issues were is that we're trying to eliminate diversity and make this a white man's group again and exclude women, disabled, minorities, and all the rest of that? Thank you very much. Have a great week, everyone.
You got to weigh the words there. Marty, you want to jump in here right now?
The first answer is the meeting is Friday, January 19th and Saturday, January 20th, meeting of the board. And that's when this will be either voted on or tabled. As far as Rhea, I believe she has left the meeting because she had another commitment. So you'd have to ask her directly on that.
Okay.
And also, I want to just take a second and welcome Fried Hein, WA6WZO, who I see is on board here. Fried is past director of the Southwestern Division prior to Dick Norton and prior to Art Goddard. Fried, welcome.
Okay. As far as when we're going to have another meeting, I don't think we're going to. We're hoping just to discuss the issues tonight and keep it positive and let everybody see both sides. Unfortunately, the way this has worked out, it hasn't been a two-sided thing as much as we had planned and hoped for. Again, if you haven't downloaded those documents, please do. K6 WKW. Warren, go ahead. You're not off. It might be better. Turn your video off and see that bandwidth problem.
Got a huge amount of mic
audio
noise.
is poor.
Say again.
His audio is very poor, a lot of mic noise.
Yeah, there's mic issues there, video issues.
Maybe he can put his question in chat.
Yeah, go ahead and try that if you would, and we'll pick up another one here. The Heckler family, is that, I got small print here. Go ahead, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I'm Daryl Hilliker, November Uniform 7, India. Thanks for allowing me a moment to speak. I found this meeting extremely fascinating. I wasn't really going to participate at first because as a blind ham, unfortunately, I find the league mostly irrelevant. But after listening to all this, I would just say this. I think that we want to be very careful right now in allowing control to be centralized to an administration at the top that thinks that inclusion for disabled hams means providing only QST article summaries to them rather than full articles. I think that's really, we want to be really, really careful. I think at this point, maybe if we had a better overall administration or a better, company culture, so to speak, then we could just say this is typical corporate speak, which it is. I mean, I work for a major corporation, and these bylaws look like that. They don't look any different than what I signed on to when I worked for my day job. So in that respect, it's all fine and good, but let's all be careful, because right now, at least with the administration we've got, the league, the administration at the top really does think that, second class status for disabled hams is okay. And they foist all of the accessibility of, books like the ARRL technician license manuals and all of those great books that we could be enjoying as blind hams through the league and purchasing and reading like everyone else. They don't want to provide those. And when they even think about, I think that a summary would be good enough. And I've talked to David Minster several times. I find often that providing a demo is helpful, in really explaining what I'm talking about, because accessibility can be abstract. He's not interested. So, just really, I know we're kind of winding this down, and I hope this is a good time, right, to speak about these things. But as far as I can tell, if we want to be, including more women in the hobby, if we want to include disabled people, if we want to include minority groups, if we want to include, LGBT groups, then this is not the right administration to support. They don't really want to do that. And furthermore, they kind of want to talk about inclusion in a way that doesn't actually include people as first class members. And that's what I have to say tonight. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes, and 73 and Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you again.
Thank you. Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, of course, yeah.
I used to do recording for the blind. It was mostly all textbooks and so on.
Right.
What format would be most useful to you of the various publications?
Right. Thanks for asking. I mean, there's a couple of ways we could go on it. Ultimately, right now, I'd say that, some kind of an, HTML format provides, the best level of markup. But, that could be provided in an accessible tagged PDF, for instance, that is a PDF that also, you can secure, right? So people don't steal it, but at the same time, it's tagged, and, people with screen readers can still read it. So yeah, I would probably have to say HTML. And if we're talking about the ebook publishing standards, that'd be a version of EPUB 3, most likely, because that also has, we can handle any format that includes, accessibility, and where that accessibility, markup is provided. So we can be pretty flexible. And I appreciate the question on the format. That's great, because with league administration, we haven't even gotten to that point. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And 7-3, everybody. Thanks.
Okay, but make a quick check. Barry, how are we doing in chat?
We're pretty good in chat. Everything is up to date. It's interesting reading. Some people have been saying that they haven't heard anything helpful tonight. Hopefully, the most important thing you've gotten was to read the documents that were put in the chat, make up your own mind, and contact your directors to let them know how you feel. That's what we're trying to get away from it. We're not trying to submit to go positive or negative on any of this stuff. We just want to inform everybody that this is going on. And that's what everybody should be taking away from you tonight. Back to you.
Thank you. Well said. Well said. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I'll ask for a quick yes or no to make sure I understood it correctly, and then I've got a comment. My understanding is there's something now that says if one director brings up something, then the group can act on it, but now they want to change that to 5 directors have to bring it up. Is that correct?
Go ahead, Mike.
No, the thing we were referring to was the ability to request a roll call vote when something is voted on, when a motion is voted on in the boardroom and it's other than unanimous. It used to be any one director could ask for a roll call vote and get it and have the votes recorded in the minutes. And as of last July, by a majority, I think a 10-5 vote, they changed that requirement to 5 directors having to ask for a roll call vote before they would honor it.
Okay, so it was roll call vote. Okay, I remember that. Longer answer than
That's correct.
Okay, so I would be concerned why they're changing the number from 1 to 5, maybe a slightly lower number. I've been in some organizations where I've had family in the same organization for generations, and you're going to find out that at one point they might make a rule, it might be, 2 directors can't belong to the same family kind of thing. And then later on, you'll get 2 people in the same family who each want to be director. So they'll, like the other guy said, what's behind it? They'll vote to get that taken out so they can be there. And then when shenanigans happen, then people will come back and say, well, let's take it back out because there's no institutional memory. Anyway, thanks.
Oh, thank you. Steve, KG5VK of Texas. Go ahead there, Steve.
Hey, greetings, Dan, and everybody else here. I just wanted to make a couple of quick points. The main thing is we're talking about censorship or censoring of a division director and removing them from the board of directors with a very, very few votes from the directors, not a majority at all. And that's the leverage that's going to be given to, let's say, the CEO. Okay. If this new code of conduct bylaw comes to pass, which comes in effect. And I would like to bring everybody that's still here, we're down to about a little over 100 right now, that if you have not read Fred Hopengarten's, and I butchered Fred's last name, apologies, K1VR's 11-page document, you really, really need to read it to understand the damage that can be caused by this toe the line code of conduct. And it's not going to stop at directors. The stepping stone from there is to oust people like Dan Marlar and myself, section managers. So we're talking about elected people that you put in office as members that are speaking and working on your behalf, magically going away because somebody doesn't like what we say. And I saw that firsthand in my face at the Huntsville, Alabama Ham Fest. And I'm going to leave it at that. Y'all have an awesome weekend. It's around the corner. The ARRL RITI Roundups this weekend. And then the following weekend is the North America CWQSO party. So I'll see many of you on the air. Y'all take care and God bless. And that's all I got to say, Dan. Thanks for the mic time. Appreciate it, Dan.
Not a problem at all, Steve. It's been a long time. We went back to the.
Can I correct one item there? Under the rules, it would take in order to actually eject or declare a director seat vacant. It would take a majority of 2/3 of the board, which currently is 10 votes. Also, I saw in the chat some talks about Dick Norton, N6AA, being ejected and then reinstated. He never was actually rejected from the board. That it was a fight, but he did retain his seat. They never actually ousted him. It didn't get that far. So just technical corrections on those items.
Thank you for the corrections, Marty. I do appreciate it and appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, Steve.
I might echo what Steve just says. Of all the documents I've posted out there, the one from Fred, K1VR, it's really long. I think it's 11 pages or something like that. It's very well spelled out, very well said some of the concerns that we all have. And that's why I'm saying we're not hitting a lot of the high points tonight. I really apologize because I should be directed at that direction. Peter, you got your hand up. You want to take it away? KC2WI.
There we go. All right. I don't really have to do anything because my director I'm in total agreement with, and that's Bob. And if you read his stuff there on the at the atldivision.org, and I think he spells it out pretty good. You know, I think some of this is partly, or the heightened awareness maybe of it is kind of fallout from we're going to send the survey out about dues increase, and people feeling that they kind of didn't really pay attention to the responses. And then the way they did it with the QST thing, which I think is absolutely wrong, to tell people that paid for it as part of their membership, oh, sorry, we're not going to send it to you anymore. So that might be part of some of the, you know, the hard feelings, or the reason why people are like, things have to be more open. So that might be part of it. But as you say, you know, read the stuff that's posted. Bob Famiglio's information, and I got to believe he has the agenda of representing the members first. And so I guess the people who are not so happy with what's going on and don't have directors that are really saying I'm standing up for the membership, those are the directors that have to be talked to. But part of the problem is, unless you do a vote to recall them, or which is too late for a vote at this next meeting, who knows?
Well, they're up every 3 years, so there's an opportunity. If somebody with differing views wants to run, then that should go to the members to find out. I see a comment in the chat that the FCC doesn't listen to the ARRL. Actually, in my experience, they do. Now, the inaction from the league over the last 6 or 7, or from the FCC over the last 6 or 7 years, has been kind of an anomaly, a very long anomaly. Maybe it's the Maunder minimum for FCC action, but I've seen plenty of times where they hold up any decision until they've heard from the league. That doesn't mean they'll always agree with them, but they wait until they've heard from the league before they finalize anything. So, frankly, that's one of the reasons that, we're not here to make the league go away. We're here to make it thrive and survive, because, they are one of the very effective voices at least with the regulators, maybe less so with Congress, but they're working on that as well. So let's not give up on the league's ability to influence the regulations that affect us all.
I think that's exactly what we're talking about tonight. Without the transparency, without the communications, if we don't have the input into the league through our directors and such, then when they talk to the FCC and other agencies, they're not really representing us, they're representing themselves. And that's what we want. And as far as Bob goes, and any other director, there's directors out there I've talked to that are totally agreed with what we're trying to do tonight, and what Fred has said. Call them anyway. They need your support. So give them a call. Bob especially. When they stand up like that, they get heat, a lot of heat. Bob's is concerned about that heat. So stand up for him, talk to him, and if you got questions, ask him and get it cleared up. Okay, I see Warren's back on. He's got his hand up. We're going to try it again.
All right. Is the audio better here?
Audio's better.
Way better.
All righty. Excellent. So I have to agree with what I'm hearing in general, that transparency is very important. And the items that are coming up should be presented to the members. But I will say, how many of us members are really paying attention? How many of us look at the meeting minutes on a regular basis? I know I don't. And so those people who are section managers, you guys know much more about what's going on. Now, I've encountered this sort of situation, I feel, in a microcosm. if you consider a homeowners association, it's a California corporation out here. It's dedicated to the service of the members, which are the homeowners. But you get directors who are serving their personal agendas, and that agenda is sometimes simply power. And so they'll misrepresent things to the members to try to create a big falderall. So you do need a code of conduct. You do need the ethics. And I see that that's, thank you, by the way, Dan, for the document links. I've only read it very quickly. And these are things that need careful reading. But I certainly do understand you need to be able to rein people in so that they don't simply create trouble and try to get the membership upset. To me, raising dues, okay, that may be upsetting, but that's noise level. Whether you get a magazine or not, that's somewhat noise level. It's the matter of clarity and transparency. I am concerned about that, and also, as was stated, censuring is one thing, but to put somebody where they can't vote on the board any longer, and it looked like that's what it said, that is objectionable. I have to agree. So remember that I'm looking at this kind of with an eye to balance, having served as a director for more than 20 years on various small, relatively unimportant boards. So I thought I would at least throw that out there for people to think about, that you need the balance. For those of you that have been paying attention to ARRL regular activities, then you can probably say more about what is the real purpose of this, because in the statements it says Bylaw 46 originally intended to define and remedy violations of conflict of interest by directors and vice directors, has found to be inadequately worded and incomplete with respect to remediation. Okay, so what does that mean? That's the stated reason for this bylaws change, but I really don't know what's been going on. So you guys that have been on the inside, I'd sure like to hear that, but I don't want to hear things like happened to Dick, where he was trying to be squelched. So that was my sense that I wanted to throw in, and I thought that would not probably go well in the chat. All right, guys, thank you very much.
Go ahead, Marty. Marty, you're muted.
Sorry, force of habit. Just glad that Warren got his audio back. Thank you.
Okay, and good points there. And I hope, I say again, download those files, read them. They're very informative, especially the one from Fred, but the one from Bob, they're very informative. I have talked personally with several directors before I even started this, and most of them understanding what the concerns are, and most of those concerns fall right along the same thing of what Fred is saying. My problem is why don't they stand up and let those concerns be out? You know, it's they're supposed to be representing this, but that's a whole different story for a whole different chapter for another time.
And I'd like to, acknowledge, both Warren and Steve and some others pointed out that, yes, this is not all one-sided. It should be a balance that a director is trying to strike. And, again, if we go to the principle, what's good for the league is ultimately good for the members, and what helps the members is ultimately good for the league, then, it shouldn't be an impossible task to find a reasonable balance. And perhaps with this particular motion, they will find some changes that will maybe soften the most objectionable parts while still achieving, the necessary balance.
We need to communicate to our directors, so nothing's going to happen one way or the other. You got to communicate however you feel. It doesn't matter how you feel. Talk to your directors. Sooner the better. Okay, we've pushed us into the longest session we've ever had. when we had, what was it? I wrote it down at some point, 216 attendees in this. We're still at 104. It's been a good thing, lots of good comments. I hope you'll take them and share them and give us some thought. And then again, talk to your directors.
And somebody made a good point in chat, two people now, that you can opt in for automatic receipt of board agendas and minutes. So you don't even have to go hunt for them. If you want, they'll be sent to you when they're ready.
And there's a link in the chat for that.
Thank you, Barry.
Thanks to Marcy for posting it.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we probably should close this out. It's been 2 hours. There's going to be a lot of people. It's been interesting, very informative. That's what we wanted. I wish it was more balanced. It didn't turn out that way, but I have a hunch that before this is all said and done, we're going to hear all sides. So anybody else got anything before I pull the plug?
Hey, Marty and Dan, this is Steve, KF5VZG.
Yes, Steve.
Is this Zoom meeting going to be available for download?
Yes, we've, it will be. I think it's too important not. There are some members of the RATPAC committee that rather not, and instead of say, okay, we're very concerned about the content of this meeting, but I think by and large, it should be posted, don't you, Marty?
I think so. We'll let the whole committee decide. It's our normal practice, you know, because most of our talks are either MCOM related or otherwise technical, and our normal practice is to record these and then have them available on YouTube and some other resources so that they can be viewed later. And we've got some 330 or more in the can. So I expect that we will end up putting this one available as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've seen your RATPAC YouTube channel. One other quick question that doesn't relate to this, but I watched the one where John Stratton was on there, you and Dan, and I forget who else was on there.
Fred Hopengarten, probably.
Yeah, that was probably who it was. It's in reference to HR 4006. Is there any updates to that?
I know they're continuing to work with members of Congress to line up influential sponsors, you know, not just names, but people who can really make things happen. And Fred is here. Maybe he can say something. He's waving in the background, wearing his Colby shirt. Fred, you want to unmute and answer his question?
Fred.
Okay. Yes, there's one really good piece of news along those lines. We've been working the House side to get support for HR 4006, and we've been picking up co-sponsors. But on Monday, we got our first win, as it were, in the Senate when Senator Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut, agreed that he will co-sponsor after introduction of the bill on the Senate side. This is a matter of your turn to curtsy, my turn to bow, because when you're working a bipartisan bill, as we have, you want a senator on the committee of jurisdiction to do the introduction of the bill. And yes, because, and that's the reason that Senator Blumenthal is not really stepping up to be the sponsor, because he doesn't sit on the committee of jurisdiction. So we've been working very hard with the office of Senator Ted Cruz, a Republican of Texas. And I must tell you, when sitting in Senate offices, in my role as a lobbyist for the League and a member of the Legislative Activities Committee, it always gets a smile when we make the argument that it would be a really good thing for Senator Cruz to partner with Senator Blumenthal on a bill reaching across the aisle. And then I never try to forget to say, and we'd be happy to set up the photo opportunity. And that always gets a smile from the staffers. But I'll tell you the punchline. The people in Senator, I think I've got this right, the people in Senator Blumenthal's office said to us, well, we can work across the aisle, even with Senator Cruz. So I'm sorry about interrupting the meeting with a little bit of humor, but I'm reflecting recent activity. I just had one more thing to say about the effectiveness of the ARRL. Yes, there have been substantial delays on things we've been seeking at the FCC. And I want to tell you that one of those reasons is basically there are next to no hams working today or for the last half a decade at the FCC. They have a need for technically inclined persons, especially degreed engineers, to work in their mobile division. They have job openings, and if you'd like a general GS schedule job in Washington, D.C., there are openings for you, and we would be happy to push your candidacy for such a job. Because there are next to no hams at the FCC, it's sometimes hard to get the attention of people who are career lawyers and really don't know radio, but you can't quote me on that because I don't want to be in trouble with the very people I'm begging. Having said that, we did have a victory this year, and Steve Waterman, who was on the call, I don't know if he's still here, will be happy to fill you in more, but we did succeed in getting something from the FCC, which goes like this. In the past, when we wanted to use the WinLink protocol, which is for wider bandwidth, for emergency communications, we were always able to get a waiver from the FCC, even if we called Saturday night at 3 a.m. and could speak only to the desk officer. He had authority to grant the waiver for the wider bandwidth WinLink HF communications. So we kept pointing out to the FCC, if you give it to us every time, why don't you let us have it permanently? And what's a month or two ago, we finally did get that through after we had worked hard with the office of Representative Debbie Lesko from Arizona and the clubs in the state of Arizona who hosted her and did a fabulous job of grassroots politicking. The saddest thing is that she's announced that she's going to retire as a member of Congress from the House of Representatives. But she was critically useful in getting the FCC to move. We planted a question with her at the annual FCC authorization hearing about the subject of wider bandwidth. And the FCC chairman Rosenworcel responded by saying, I'll look into it. Of course, they'd had 9 years to look into it, but hadn't made a decision. But as a result of the lobbying and the politicking, and frankly, a lot of work done by the ARRL, we did get that victory. So I don't want people listening tonight to think that we are ineffective at the FCC or doing nothing on HR 4006. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Fred. Great timing. And somebody pointed out in chat that Debbie Lesko's husband, Representative Lesko's husband, is a ham. So there we go.
Yes,
We have an inside connection.
True. And if you know of a brother, sister, cousin, aunt, father, daughter, son of any member of Congress today, please email me, k1vr@arrl.net. We will pull on that string. We're not shy about it.
Very good. Very good.
Okay.
Okay,
Well,
Dan, I've got nothing else.
okay. Well, thank you, Fred. We appreciate you coming on and talking to us and telling us that. One last comment, the same comment I made all night, download those files and read them. I think you'll be more enlightened than what we were able to cover this period of time here. All right, with that in mind, I'm going to say 73s, everybody.